We take our clean water for granted, but aside from treating the water before it's sent to our water mains, the city has a controlled flushing program to keep it clean. Hi, I'm Councilman Bob FIFER. Maybe you've seen city crews in your neighborhood running water from a fire hydrant and wonder what's going on. Well, that's part of a program called controlled flushing, which helps clean our water. So let's find out how they do that. Today I have Utility Supervisor Steve HAMEL with us to explain to us why we flush these lines and how do we keep the water clean.
Well, the reason, Bob, that we flush these water mains is to remove the sediment and some of the film that gets built up on the interior of our water mains.
Now, how you do that, there must be a lot of planning that takes place.
There is planning involved in this, and a lot of it has to do with our water system and knowing it and the maps that we have for our water system. So the whole idea is to turn on valves so we know where we're pulling water from a clean source in a controlled situation.
We have many of these fire hydrants in the city. How many do we have?
Well, there's 4,800 hydrants in the system approximately. We don't use all of those when we're flushing the system. It depends on where they are and how we're flushing the system, on which ones we use.
How often do we do these flushes?
Well, typically we flush a third of the city every year. So it takes us 3 full years to flush the whole city. And obviously we can't do these flushing operations in the winter months,
right,
because it'll freeze up. So it's done in the summer months.
And when you do one of these controlled flushes, how much water goes through that at a per minute basis or over some time?
There's a little bit of mathematics involved in that question. It depends on the size of the main that we're flushing, and it depends on how long of a distance that main is that we're flushing. For a 4-inch pipe, we're doing approximately 200 gallons per minute. That's enough to get the velocity in the pipe to 5 to 6 feet per second. That's what it takes to remove the sediment and the scaling in the pipe.
We're just putting on this hose monster to flow the water to flush the mains at a fast enough rate to stir up the mains and flush it out these fire hydrants. That was 1,147 gallons a minute we just flushed out of this last hydrant.
So when we go to a larger pipe, that number's much more. Like a 12-inch would be 1,800 gallons per minute, for example.
So when we do one of these flushes, some residents experience some brown water that comes out. Can you maybe explain why that might be? What's going on?
Well, we're intentionally stirring up this residue in the main to flush it out. So there is a time frame in there where it is discolored water. We keep that in a controlled environment so it has the least impact on our citizens.
There's a little bit more science behind the scenes and record keeping that takes place when we do an operation like this. Can you explain a little bit on how we track how much water goes through an activity like this one?
We do account for all the water that we're flushing out of here for water accountability reasons, because obviously it's not metered. And there's other things we got to take into account, like the trash cans that are sitting out that could get washed down the gutters by us flowing these large volumes of water. Other things, we got to look for possible property damage that we can cause. So we typically look down the street where we're going to be flushing this water and the drop inlets that they go into, making sure everything is good. The other thing we got to keep in mind here is we have stormwater treatment regulations that we got to be mindful of. The chlorinated water needs to be dechlorinated at certain times when it's flowing into the waterways of the state. So that's another key thing we need to keep on top of.
Well, thanks, Steve, for having me out today. I really appreciate learning everything you've done and what your crews do for our city every day. Thank you for showing me how you do that.